The rain battered the cracked window of Alex's tiny Brooklyn apartment, each drop a reminder of the life he'd lost. 3 years ago, he'd stood in a cathedral, heart pounding, vowing to love Julian forever only to learn the man he adored had built their marriage on a lie. Now, at 29, Alex was broken, and staring at a past that refused to stay buried. He sank onto the threadbare couch, clutching a worn journal, its pages filled with the dreams he'd once shared with Julian. Back then, Julian had been his everything, a charismatic law student with a smile that could light up the darkest room. Alex, a struggling artist with a knack for seeing beauty in the mundane, had fallen hard. Their love had felt like a wildfire, unstoppable and all-consuming. But wildfires burn out, and Julian's had left nothing but ash. The journal fell open to a sketch Alex had drawn the night they met, at a queer art gallery opening in Manhattan. Julian, with his sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes, had stood out like a beacon among the crowd. He'd approached Alex, complimenting his painting, a vibrant mural of two hands intertwined against a stormy sky. "You've got a gift," Julian had said, his voice smooth as whiskey. "You see the world in ways most people never will." By the end of the night, they were kissing under the glow of a street lamp, and Alex was already dreaming of a future together. But Julian's charm had a shadow. He was ambitious, a rising star in New York's cutthroat legal world. And Alex soon learned that ambition came first. Their whirlwind romance led to a proposal 6 months later. And Alex, blinded by love, said yes without hesitation. He didn't see the cracks Julian's late nights at the firm, the way he dodged questions about his work, or the cold calculation in his eyes when he thought Alex wasn't looking. They married in a lavish ceremony, funded by Julian's mysterious investors. And for a moment, Alex believed they'd build a life together. The truth unraveled on their first anniversary. Alex had found an email on Julian's laptop, left open by mistake. It was from a man named Victor Crane, a powerful attorney with ties to New York's elite. The words still burned in Alex's mind: "Marry the artist. He's your ticket to the inner circle. His connections will open doors." Julian hadn't loved him. He'd used him. Alex's art had caught the eye of influential gallery owners, people with sway in the city's cultural scene. Julian had seen Alex not as a partner, but as a stepping stone to power. Confronting Julian had been like screaming into a void. "You don't understand how the world works," Julian had said, his voice icy. "I did what I had to do." He'd left that night, taking their shared bank account, their apartment lease, and Alex's trust with him. Alex was left with nothing but debt and a shattered heart. Now, 3 years later, Alex was scraping by, teaching art classes to kids in a community center while his own canvases gathered dust. The journal in his hands held sketches of their old life picnics in Central Park, late-night talks on their fire escape, Julian's hand resting on his. Each drawing was a wound, but Alex couldn't let go. He'd loved Julian with every piece of himself, and the betrayal still cut deep. A knock at the door snapped him out of his thoughts. It was late, nearly midnight, and the rain was relentless. He hesitated, assuming it was a neighbor or a delivery gone wrong. But when he opened the door, his breath caught. Julian stood there, soaked to the bone, his once pristine suit wrinkled and stained. His blue eyes, once so confident, were hollow, desperate. Alex, Julian said, his voice trembling. I need your help. For a moment, Alex couldn't speak. The man who destroyed him was standing at his door, begging. Part of him wanted to slam the door shut, to let Julian drown in whatever mess he'd made. But another part, the part that still remembered their first kiss, their shared dreams, can't look away. What do you want? Alex finally asked, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Julian stepped closer, water dripping onto the floor. I've lost everything, he said. My job, my reputation, everything. You're the only one I can turn to. Alex's grip tightened on the doorframe. He wanted to hate Julian, to let him suffer. But the sight of him, broken and vulnerable, stirred something Alex thought he'd buried long ago. He didn't know if it was love or pity, but it was enough to make him step aside. Come in, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. But don't think this changes anything. Julian nodded, stepping into the apartment. The door closed behind him, shutting out the rain but not the past. Alex didn't know what Julian was running from, but he knew one thing: this was only the beginning. Word count, 614, to be continued in subsequent parts, each approximately 1,000 words, to reach the total of 8,000 words across 8 files. The apartment was suffocatingly small, its walls closing in as Alex watched Julian shake off his wet jacket. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms now looked like a stray dog, his shoulders slumped, his hands trembling. Alex crossed his arms, leaning against the counter, trying to keep the anger burning brighter than the ache in his chest. Why are you here, Julian? Alex asked, his tone sharp. You made it clear I was nothing to you. Why now? Julian ran a hand through his damp hair, avoiding Alex's gaze. I didn't know where else to go, he said. They're after me, Alex. The people I worked for, they don't let you walk away. Alex frowned, his mind racing. Julian had always been vague about his work, mentioning deals and clients without specifics. Back then, Alex had chalked it up to the high-stakes world of corporate law. Now, he wasn't so sure. Who's they? He asked. And why should I care? Julian finally met his eyes. And for a moment, Alex saw a flicker of the man he'd fallen for: vulnerable, almost human. Victor Crane, Julian said. And his network. They're not just lawyers. They're connected. Politicians, CEOs, people with real power. I got in too deep, and now they want me gone. Alex's stomach twisted. Victor Crane. The name from that damning email. He'd assumed Crane was just a shady mentor, not a kingpin. So, what? You pissed off the mob. Alex's voice dripped with sarcasm, but his heart pounded. This was bigger than he'd imagined. Not the mob, Julian said, his voice low. Worse. They don't just kill you. They erase your name, your life, everything. I've seen it happen. Alex wanted to laugh, to call it a bad movie plot. But Julian's fear was real, etched into the lines of his face. And you thought showing up here would fix it. Alex snapped. You used me, Julian. You married me for my connections, drained our account, and left me to drown. Why the hell should I help you? Julian flinched. And for a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then he spoke, his voice barely audible. Because I loved you. Alex. I know you don't believe me, but I did. I still do. The words hit like a punch. Alex turned away, his hands gripping the counter so hard his knuckles whitened. He wanted to scream, to throw Julian out into the rain. But those words, I loved you, stirred memories he'd tried to bury. Late nights, painting while Julian read case files beside him. The way Julian's laugh had filled their old apartment. The promises they'd made under the stars. Get out, Alex said, his voice shaking. I don't owe you anything. Julian didn't move. I know I hurt you, he said. But I'm begging you. Alex. They'll find me. And if they do, I'm dead. Against his better judgment, Alex turned back. Julian's eyes were wide, pleading. And for the first time, Alex saw fear instead of manipulation. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't ignore the pull. One night, Alex said finally, You sleep on the couch. Tomorrow, you're gone. Julian nodded, relief flooding his face. Thank you, he whispered. Alex pointed to the couch, then retreated to his bedroom, slamming the door. He leaned against it, heart racing. He didn't trust Julian, not after everything. But the man's desperation was real, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that letting him in had just pulled him into something dangerous. The next morning, Alex woke to the smell of coffee. Julian was in the kitchen, looking slightly less like a drowned rat. He'd found Alex's old sketchbook on the counter and was flipping through it, his expression unreadable. Don't touch that, Alex snapped, snatching the book away. Julian raised his hands in surrender. I wasn't prying. I just missed your work. Alex ignored him, pouring coffee to steady his nerves. You said they're after you. Tell me everything. No lies. Julian hesitated, then began. He'd been recruited by Crane's firm straight out of law school, lured by promises of wealth and influence. At first, it was just high-profile cases. But soon he was handling special projects, deals that skirted the law, funneling money to powerful people. When Alex's art started gaining traction, Crane saw an opportunity. Alex's connections to gallery owners and philanthropists were a goldmine for Crane's network. Julian was told to get close, to marry him if necessary. I didn't want to, Julian said, his voice breaking. But Crane doesn't take no for an answer. I thought I could protect you by keeping you in the dark. Protect me. Alex laughed bitterly. You left me with nothing. Julian. No money. No home. No trust. You protected yourself. Julian looked down, shame coloring his face. I know. But when I left, I thought I was keeping you safe. If I'd stayed, they would have come for you too. Alex wanted to believe him, but the wound was too raw. So what now? You're on the run. And what? You expect me to hide you? I don't know, Julian admitted. I had nowhere else to go. Before Alex could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We know he's with you. Hand him over, or you're next. His blood ran cold. He showed the screen to Julian, whose face paled. They found me, Julian whispered. Alex's mind raced. He could turn Julian away, let him face whatever was coming. But the thought of Julian dead or worse twisted something inside him. He didn't know Julian anything, but he couldn't let go of the man he'd once loved. We need a plan, Alex said, his voice firm. And you're telling me everything. Alex's apartment felt like a cage, the walls pressing in as he stared at the threatening text on his phone. Julian sat on the couch, his hands clasped tightly, as if holding himself together. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with tension, the kind that made every creak of the old building sound like a warning. Who sent this? Alex demanded, shoving the phone in Julian's face. And don't give me half answers. Julian swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the window. It's Crane's people. They've got eyes everywhere, cops, private investigators, even hackers. They probably tracked my phone. Alex's heart sank. He'd spent 3 years rebuilding his life, clawing his way out of the hole Julian had left him in. Now, he was being dragged back into a world he didn't understand. Turn it off, he said, pointing to Julian's phone. Now. Julian fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a sleek smartphone. He powered it down, but his hands shook. It might not matter, he said. If they know I'm here, they're already watching. Alex paced the small living room, his mind spinning. He wasn't a hero. He was an artist, not some action movie protagonist. But the text wasn't a bluff, could feel it. What do they want from you? He asked. Money. Secrets. Julian hesitated, then spoke. I have something they need. Documents. Proof of their dealings, money laundering, bribes, blackmail. I was supposed to deliver them to a client, but I kept copies. Insurance. You know. But when I ran, they figured out I had them. Alex stopped pacing. You're telling me you've got dirt on a criminal network, and you brought that trouble to my door. I didn't have a choice. Julian's voice cracked. I thought I could disappear, start over. But they're too powerful. I came here because you're the only person I trust. Alex laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. Trust. You don't get to use that word with me. Julian stood, stepping closer. I know I messed up. Alex. I know I hurt you. But I'm not lying now. Those documents are my only leverage. And if I don't use them, I'm dead. And now, so are you. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Alex wanted to shove Julian out, to pretend this wasn't his problem. But the text on his phone was proof it was too late for that. He sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. Where are these documents? Safe, Julian said. A locker at Grand Central. But we can't just walk in there. They'll be watching. We. Alex snapped. There's no we here. Julian. You made your choices. Julian's face softened, and he knelt in front of Alex, his eyes pleading. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. Alex. Not for me, for you. If they think you're involved, they won't stop. Let me fix this. Alex's chest tightened. He hated how Julian's voice still pulled at him. How those blue eyes could still make him feel like the only person in the world. "Fine," he said at last. "But you follow my lead. No more lies." Julian nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you," he whispered. They spent the next hour planning. Julian explained the layout of Grand Central, the locker's location, and the risks. Crane's people were relentless, but they weren't invincible. Alex suggested a disguise, something to blend into the crowd. He dug through his closet, pulling out an old hoodie and a baseball cap for Julian. For himself, he grabbed a scarf and sunglasses. It wasn't much, but it might buy them time. As they prepared to leave, Alex's phone buzzed again. Another text, "Don't run. We're closer than you think." His blood ran cold. He showed it to Julian, who cursed under his breath. "They're bluffing," Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. Alex wasn't so sure. He glanced out the window, half expecting to see shadowy figures in the street. "We move fast," he said. "In and out. No heroics." They left the apartment, stepping into the humid New York morning. The city was alive. Horns blaring. People rushing past. Alex kept his head down, his heart pounding as they boarded the subway to Manhattan. Julian sat beside him, their shoulders brushing. And for a moment, Alex remembered how it felt to be close to him, to feel safe. He pushed the thought away. At Grand Central, the crowd was a blessing and a curse giver, but also 1,000 eyes that could be watching. They moved quickly, weaving through tourists and commuters. Julian led the way to the lower level, where the lockers lined a quiet corridor. Alex's pulse raced as Julian punched in a code, the locker clicking open to reveal a small flash drive. "Got it," Julian said, pocketing the drive. But before they could move, a man in a dark coat appeared at the end of the corridor. His eyes locked on them. "Julian," he called, his voice low and dangerous. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Alex grabbed Julian's arm, pulling him toward the crowd. "Run," he hissed. They sprinted through the station, dodging bodies, the man in the coat close behind. Alex's heart thundered as they burst onto the street, the city swallowing them into its chaos. They didn't stop until they reached a quiet alley, gasping for breath. "We can't go back to your place," Julian said, panting. "They know where you live." Alex nodded, his mind racing. He didn't know who to trust or where to go. But one thing was clear, they were in this together now, whether he liked it or not. The alley smelled of damp concrete and garbage, the kind of place where New York hid its secrets. Alex leaned against the wall, his breath still uneven, while Julian checked the street for signs of pursuit. The flash drive in Julian's pocket felt like a ticking bomb, and Alex couldn't shake the image of the man in the dark coat, his eyes cold and unyielding. "We need somewhere safe," Alex said, his voice low. "Somewhere they won't look." Julian nodded, his face pale. "I know a place. An old friend from law school. Marcus. He's off the grid. Lives in a loft in the Bronx. He owes me." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Owes you? For what?" "Another one of your deals." Julian winced. "It's not like that. Marcus got into some trouble a few years back. I helped him out. Kept his name clean. He'll help us. Alex didn't trust Julian's promises. But they were out of options. Fine, he said. But if this goes south, I'm done. They took a circuitous route to the Bronx, switching trains twice to throw off anyone following. Alex kept his eyes on the crowd, searching for the man in the coat or anyone who lingered too long. Julian was silent, his usual confidence replaced by a jittery edge. Alex hated how it made him want to protect him, despite everything. Marcus's loft was in a converted warehouse, the kind of place artists and misfits called home. Marcus himself was a wiry man in his 30s, with a shaved head and a cautious smile. Julian, he said, opening the door. Didn't expect to see you again. Thanks for this, Julian said, stepping inside. This is Alex. He's with me. Marcus glanced at Alex, his eyes sharp but not unkind. You two in trouble. You could say that, Alex muttered, brushing past. The loft was spacious, with exposed brick and mismatched furniture. It felt safe, at least for now. Over coffee, Julian explained everything: the documents, Crane's network, the chase. Marcus listened, his expression darkening. You're messing with some bad people, Julian, he said. Crane's got reach. You sure those files are worth dying for? They're worth more than that, Julian said. They could bring him down. All of them. Alex felt a spark of hope, mixed with dread. What's on the drive? He asked. Exactly. Julian hesitated, then pulled out the flash drive. Bank records, emails, audio recordings. Proof that Crane's been funneling money to politicians, rigging contracts, even blackmailing judges. If this gets out, his whole operation collapses. And you kept this, why? Alex asked. You planning to play hero? Julian shook his head. I kept it to survive. If they think I'll leak it, they might back off. Marcus snorted. Or they'll kill you faster. Alex's mind raced. The drive was their leverage, but it was also a death sentence. We need to get this to someone who can use it, he said. A journalist. Maybe. Someone not in Crane's pocket. Marcus nodded. I know a guy. Works for an independent outlet. No ties to the big players. But you'll need to move fast. Crane's people don't mess around. They spent the next few hours strategizing. Marcus's contact, a reporter named Lena, was their best shot. She'd broken stories on corruption before, but reaching her without being tracked was the challenge. Marcus offered to set up a meeting, using a burner phone to keep it off the radar. As night fell, Alex and Julian sat on the loft's fire escape, the city sprawling below. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Alex broke it first. Did you ever love me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Or was it all a game? Julian looked at him, his eyes raw. It wasn't a game. I fell for you, Alex. Harder than I ever planned. But Crane, he made it impossible. I thought marrying you would keep you safe. Keep you out of it. I was wrong. Alex's throat tightened. He wanted to believe it. But trust was a fragile thing, and Julian had shattered it. You could have told me, he said. I would have fought with you. I know, Julian said, his voice breaking. That's why I couldn't. Before Alex could respond, Marcus called them inside. Lena's in. She'll meet you tomorrow. Midnight. At a diner in Queens. But you need to be careful. Crane's people are probably watching every move. Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. He didn't trust Julian. Not fully. But he couldn't walk away. Not now. The drive wasn't just Julian's fight, it was his too. Crane had taken his life apart, and Alex wasn't about to let him win. They slept in shifts, taking turns keeping watch. Alex lay on a cot, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying Julian's words. I fell for you. He didn't know what to feel: anger, hope, or something in between. All he knew was that tomorrow, they'd face the fire together. The diner in Queens was a relic, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. Alex and Julian slipped into a booth at midnight, the air thick with the smell of grease and coffee. Lena, the journalist, sat across from them, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She was in her 40s, with short, gray-streaked hair and a no-nonsense vibe that put Alex at ease, even as his nerves screamed. You've got 10 minutes, Lena said, sipping her coffee. Tell me why I should risk my neck for this. Julian slid the flash drive across the table. This is proof Victor Crane's been running a shadow empire: money laundering, blackmail, you name it. Names, dates, accounts. Enough to take him down. Lena raised an eyebrow, pocketing the drive. And you're giving this to me because, what? You're suddenly a saint. I'm trying to stay alive, Julian said. And keep him safe. He nodded toward Alex, who shifted uncomfortably. Lena's gaze flicked to Alex. You're the artist, right? The one he married for clout. Alex's jaw tightened. Something like that. She leaned back, studying them. All right. I'll look at it. But if this is real, you're both targets. You don't just walk away from Crane. We know, Alex said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Can you get it out fast? Lena nodded. If it checks out, I can have a story ready in 48 hours. But you need to disappear until then. No phones. No credit cards. Nothing traceable. They left the diner with a plan, lay low at Marcus's loft until Lena's story broke. But as they stepped into the night, Alex's skin prickled. A black SUV idled across the street, its windows tinted. Julian, he whispered, nudging him. We've got company. Julian's face paled. Move. Now. They ducked into an alley, their footsteps echoing as the SUV's engine roared to life. Alex's heart pounded as they ran, weaving through back streets, the city a blur of lights and shadows. They didn't stop until they reached a subway station, blending into the late-night crowd. They're closing in, Julian panted, his eyes wild. Crane knows we're moving. Alex gripped his arm. Then we keep moving. We don't stop until this is over. Back at Marcus's loft, They barricaded the door and took stock. Lena had the drive. But 2 days felt like a lifetime. Marcus gave them burner phones and a warning. Crane's people are good. If they're this close, you're running out of time. Alex couldn't sleep, his mind replaying the chase. The diner. Julian's confession on the fire escape. He sat by the window, sketching absent-mindedly a habit that grounded him. The pencil traced Julian's face, the lines softer than he intended. He hated how much he still cared. Julian joined him, sitting close. "You're still drawing me," he said, his voice soft. Alex closed the sketchbook. "Doesn't mean anything." "It does to me," Julian said. "I know I don't deserve it. But seeing you again, it's the only thing keeping me going." Alex's chest ached. He wanted to push Julian away, to protect himself. But the truth was, he'd never stopped loving him, even after the betrayal. "If we get through this," Alex said, "you've got a lot to make up for." Julian nodded, his hand brushing Alex's. "I will. I swear." The moment was cut short by a crash downstairs. Marcus burst in, his face grim. "They're here," he said. "We need to move." They grabbed their things and fled through a back exit, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them. The night swallowed them as they ran. The city no longer a home, but a battlefield. Alex clutched Julian's hand, not out of love, but survival. They were in too deep, and there was no turning back. The streets of the Bronx blurred as Alex and Julian ran, Marcus leading the way. The air was thick with the threat of pursuit, every shadow a potential enemy. They ducked into an abandoned warehouse, its rusted beams and broken windows offering temporary shelter. Alex's lungs burned, but adrenaline kept him moving. "They're not far behind," Marcus said, peering through a crack in the wall. "We can't stay here long." Julian leaned against a crate, catching his breath. "We need to get to Lena. If she's got the story ready, we can end this." Alex shook his head, frustration boiling over. "And what? Hope Crane's people just give up." "They're not going to stop, Julian. Not until they have you and that drive." Julian's eyes met his, filled with a mix of guilt and determination. "I know. But if we can hold out until the story breaks, they'll have bigger problems than us." Marcus cut in. "There's a safe house I know, a few miles from here. Used to be a squat for artists. It's off the grid. No cameras. We can hole up there until Lena's ready." They moved quickly, sticking to alleys and side streets. The safe house was a crumbling brownstone, its windows boarded up, the air inside stale. Marcus secured the door, while Alex and Julian collapsed onto a dusty couch. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the city. Alex's mind raced. He'd gone from teaching kids to paint to running from criminals in a matter of days. And yet, here he was, still tethered to Julian. He glanced at the man beside him, whose face was etched with exhaustion and fear. "Why didn't you just run?" Alex asked. "You could have disappeared, started over somewhere else. Why come back to me?" Julian's gaze softened. "Because you're my home, Alex. Even after everything, you're the only thing that feels real." The words hit hard, stirring a warmth Alex didn't want to feel. He turned away, focusing on the cracked ceiling. Don't say that. Not now. Before Julian could respond, Marcus's burner phone buzzed. It was Lena. The drive's legit, she said. Her voice clipped. I'm working the story, but Crane's people are sniffing around. Stay low. I'll call when it's live. They settled in, taking turns keeping watch. Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted, the weight of the past 3 years crashing down. He'd rebuilt his life without Julian, found purpose in his art, his students. But now, with Julian beside him, those old wounds felt fresh. Hours passed, the tension growing with every creak of the old house. Then, a noisy, soft thud outside. Marcus signaled for silence, creeping to the window. 2 guys. He whispered. They're checking the street. Alex's heart raced. He grabbed Julian's arm, pulling him toward the back door. We need to go? They slipped out, moving silently through the night. Marcus led them to a nearby subway tunnel, an old maintenance entrance he'd used years ago. The darkness swallowed them, the air damp and cold. Alex's hand found Julian's, their fingers interlocking out of instinct. Neither spoke, but the touch was a lifeline. They emerged in a different part of the city, near the East River. Marcus found a payphone rare in 2025 and called Lena. It's going live tomorrow, she said. Front page. Stay alive until then. Alex felt a flicker of hope, but it was drowned out by fear. Crane's people were relentless, and the safe house was compromised. They needed a new plan, and fast. Julian suggested a motel on the outskirts of the city, a place too seedy for Crane's radar. Alex agreed, though every step felt like walking deeper into a trap. As they checked into the motel, Alex caught Julian's eye. If we make it through this, he said, we're done running. You hear me? Julian nodded, his expression raw. I hear you. The motel room smelled of stale smoke and regret, its faded wallpaper a perfect match for Alex's mood. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the burner phone, willing it to ring with news from Lena. Julian paced, his nervous energy filling the small space. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to their fight for survival. We're close, Julian said, more to himself than Alex. If Lena pulls this off, Crane's finished. Alex didn't respond. He was tired of running, tired of fear, tired of the pull Julian still had on him. He'd spent years hating this man, yet here he was, risking everything for him. What happens after? Alex asked. If we win, what's left? Julian stopped pacing, his eyes searching Alex's. I don't know, he admitted. But I want a chance to make things right. With you. Alex shook his head. You don't get to say that. Not after what you did. I know, Julian said, sitting beside him. But I'm not the same man I was. Losing you, it changed me. Before Alex could respond, the burner phone buzzed. Lena's voice was urgent. The story's live. Online now. Print tomorrow. You need to stay hidden. Crane's people are in a panic. Alex felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. A loud bang came from the motel door. Julian grabbed his arm, pulling him to the floor as the door splintered open. Two men burst in, their faces hard, one holding a gun. "Give us the drive," the armed man said, his voice calm but deadly. Julian stood, hands raised. "It's gone. Already with the press." The man's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." Alex's heart pounded as he crouched behind the bed, his mind racing. He spotted a lamp on the nightstand, heavy, solid. Without thinking, he grabbed it and swung, catching the second man in the temple. The man crumpled, and Julian tackled the gunman, wrestling for the weapon. A shot rang out, deafening in the small room, but it hit the ceiling. "Run!" Julian shouted, pinning the gunman down. Alex hesitated, then bolted for the door, Julian close behind. They sprinted through the motel parking lot, the sound of pursuit fading as they ducked into a nearby park. They collapsed behind a cluster of trees, gasping for breath. "You okay?" Julian asked, his hands checking Alex for injuries. "I'm fine," Alex said, pushing him away. "But we can't keep doing this." Julian nodded, his face grim. "Lena's story will hit hard. Crane's network is unraveling. We just need to hold out a little longer." They found a new hiding spot, a church basement Marcus had mentioned as a last resort. The pastor, an old friend of Marcus's, let them in without questions. The basement was cold, but it felt safe, a brief reprieve from the chaos. As they sat in the dim light, Alex finally spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said, "but I don't want you dead." Julian's eyes softened. "That's enough for now." They stayed up, talking through the night, not about Crane or the drive, but about the past. Julian admitted how he'd fallen for Alex despite Crane's orders, how he'd hated himself for lying. Alex shared the pain of those years alone, the way he'd poured his heart into his art to survive. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. By morning, Lena called again. "Crane's been arrested. The feds moved in after the story broke. You're safe for now." Alex felt the weight lift, but not entirely. Safety didn't erase the past, and it didn't answer what came next. He looked at Julian, torn between love and mistrust, and knew the hardest part was still ahead. The church basement was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of traffic filtering through the high windows. Alex sat on a folding chair, his sketchbook open but untouched. Julian was across the room, staring at his hands, the weight of the past week etched into his face. Crane was behind bars, his empire crumbling, but the victory felt hollow. Alex's heart was still a battlefield, torn between the man he'd loved and the betrayal that had defined them. Lena's story had done its job. The news was everywhere, headlines screaming about corruption, arrests, and a network of power that had operated in the shadows for years. Julian's documents had been the spark, and Lena's reporting the fire. But for Alex, the real question wasn't about Crane, it was about what came next. He looked at Julian, who seemed smaller now, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined him. "What do you want, Julian?" Alex asked, his voice steady. "You're free now? Why are you still here?" Julian met his gaze, his eyes raw with emotion. I want you, he said simply. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to earn your trust again. I want to be the man you thought I was. Alex's chest tightened. He'd spent 3 years hating Julian, rebuilding his life brick by brick. But the truth was, he'd never stopped loving him, not completely. The sketches in his journal, the memories that haunted him, were proof of that. You broke me, Alex said, his voice cracking. You don't get to just walk back in and fix it. I know, Julian said, stepping closer. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying, if you'll let me. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Alex wanted to push him away, to protect the fragile peace he'd built. But he also remembered the Julian who'd kissed him under the stars, who'd laughed at his terrible puns, who'd made him feel like he could conquer the world. That Julian was still there, buried under the mistakes. Before he could respond, the pastor appeared, his face kind but urgent. You boys need to move. The feds want to talk to Julian. Protective custody, they said. You're safe, but they need your testimony. Julian nodded, but his eyes stayed on Alex. Come with me, he said. We can start over, somewhere new. Alex hesitated. The idea of leaving New York, of starting fresh, was tempting. But it also meant trusting Julian again, risking everything he'd rebuilt. He thought of his students, his art, the life he'd made without Julian. Could he let that go? I need time, Alex said finally. I can't just decide this now. Julian's face fell, but he nodded. I'll wait. As long as it takes. They left the church, stepping into a city that felt different now, less like a trap, more like a place where they could heal. The feds took Julian to a safe house, promising Alex he'd be protected. Alex returned to his apartment, the journal still in his hands. He opened it to a blank page and started sketching not Julian this time, but himself. A man who'd survived betrayal, danger, and heartbreak, and was still standing. Months later, Alex stood in a small gallery, his latest work on display. The paintings were raw, vivid, telling the story of love, loss, and redemption. Julian was there, in the crowd, his presence quiet but steady. They hadn't reconciled, not fully, but they were talking, rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. As the gallery lights dimmed, Alex caught Julian's eye. For the first time in years, he felt something like hope. They'd been through hell, but maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Not as they were, but as something new, stronger, wiser, and built on truth. And outside, the city kept turning, its heartbeat a reminder that even broken things could mend.